Welcome back. So today, markets not so good. Today, of course, we ended in the red, and that's because we had more fears about inflation, about tariffs, and we have a big FOMC meeting coming up later this week. Ford reported, and they said, even though they did a really good quarter, they said that they're not going to give guidance because they believe they will be impacted by $2.5 billion because of tariffs, right? So they are one of many companies that are very, very, very fearful about tariffs and believe they will be impacted. That is why the markets are in the red. However, Kraken says Bitcoin is a safe haven asset. Okay, their chief economist actually explains it like this. If you compare Bitcoin to NASDAQ, Bitcoin is actually at an all-time high. That is actually something that I haven't thought of before. Most of us compare Bitcoin to USD. So of course, Bitcoin isn't at an all-time high because it's not at 109,000. But if you compare Bitcoin to NASDAQ index, Bitcoin is at an all-time high. So that tells you something. Bitcoin is stronger than the tech sector. So it is a safe haven. That means a lot of people are putting their money into Bitcoin or selling Bitcoin less than they are of tech, right? That's a really interesting way to think about it. But ultimately, Bitcoin is still holding very strong, 94,700. And there are two CME gaps I want to show you guys. Two places Bitcoin can be going in the near future. Okay, but it's a very interesting way to think about how Bitcoin is at all-time high if you're versing it versus NASDAQ index. And because it is seen as a safe haven, we know BlackRock is loading up hundreds of billions, okay? Hundreds of billions, probably soon. Right now, it's loading up hundreds of millions per day, and it has acquired tens of billions. But you know what? Over the next few years, there will be a lot more accumulation. 330 billion in the next 5 years. This is with corporations. This is just a prediction. And it could be a lot more than that. More and more people are recognizing Bitcoin as a safe haven, as a store of value. And it is slowly decoupling away from NASDAQ, from the US market, from everything else out there. It's proving itself. You just have to look at things differently. Too many people only look at, okay, we're down from all-time high. No one's looking at it how we are still up from a year ago. No one's looking at it from the last recession. No one's looking at it from the last top, or looking at it compared to NASDAQ, or looking at it compared to the tech sector or the biggest tech companies out there, and how well Bitcoin has performed, right? And recently, we had $19 billion worth of inflow, okay, in the last 30 days. We definitely have a lot of whale and institutional buying, not just retail, although a lot of long-term holders are definitely buying. But it pales in comparison to the large whales and institutions that continue to buy. Saylor alone in the last month bought close to $2 billion. And let's not forget BlackRock buying hundreds of millions every single day. And then you add in the whales and others, you know, $19 billion the last 30 days. That's a lot. That's a lot. You got to save some for yourself. That's why I keep telling you guys, stack those sats because there's only so much to go around. And the good thing is, 88% of the supply is in profit. 88%. So those of you guys holding Bitcoin, you shouldn't be panicking at all. I know alts are down, but those of you guys that are holding Bitcoin, you should be sitting pretty. You should not be at a loss unless you bought at all-time high. But even if you did, and you DCA'd around the 70s and 80s, you're probably even still, right? And here's the good news. I mentioned those two CME gaps, right? Where are they? There's one upside between 96 and 97,000, and there's one that's a little bit of downside around 92, 93. And we kind of filled that already. So are we going to go downside or upside? But either way, we're in the 90s, okay? Considering that we've been going up, we're like 95,000 now, hitting back to the 97,000 gap, that's not too far off. In fact, we were just there 2 days ago, right? I think that's coming soon. And long term, we're still following that global M2 liquidity, that money supply. We're about 90 days behind it, but the global liquidity has been going up, and you could see what's going to happen next for Bitcoin. It's been following it to the T, right? So you guys just have to have patience. Quantitative easing is also going to kick in soon. When Bitcoin is ready to run, it's going to run like no other assets out there. And we know that. That's why we're in Bitcoin. It moves like no other, right? So you just got to stay strong, stay focused, continue to DCA, and make sure you don't let all the big institutions and whales grab up all the Bitcoin. You got to save some for yourself. Now, speaking of alts, there are a lot that are doing something with Bitcoin as well. Okay, Bitcoin OS completes its first bridgeless cross-chain BTC transfer between Bitcoin and Cardano. This was talked about for a while. Cardano is still trying to improve itself, trying to become the most decentralized chain out there. Charles still doing a lot of things, trying to scale and like I said, becoming decentralized, but still working with other dApps and bridges like this. Right? Bring Bitcoin to the Cardano blockchain. That's pretty cool. Bring more liquidity into Cardano's ecosystem. Always a plus. Not only that, bring AI agents into Cardano. That's also a big plus. AI is going to be a big part of crypto, a big part of everyone, right? So that is also being worked on. That may be why Cardano whales are loading up on ADA, because there are so many things being worked on within Cardano's ecosystem. So whether you like ADA or whether you like Charles, there are definitely a lot of things being worked on behind the scenes right now. And speaking of Bitcoin, right? Wrap Bitcoin is also now live on Solana. Direct Bitcoin liquidity and bridgeless transfers to Cardano. So now you can bridge Bitcoin to Cardano and to Solana. So now you're getting liquidity all over the place. And why would you want to bring wrap Bitcoin to Solana? For DeFi. Same thing. Why would you want to bring to Cardano? For DeFi purposes, right? Now you could stake Bitcoin and you could trade Bitcoin. So there's many reasons why you want to do this. So good for Solana, good for Bitcoin, good for Cardano. A lot of things being built behind the scenes. And last thing I'll say about Solana is Jupiter launches bop.fun because they want to get into the meme coin, the Launchpad game. You know, Radium just launched theirs. Jupiter now launches theirs. And, you know, we have Pump.fun too. Everyone wants to get a piece. And when the market recovers, memes will get hot again. And this will probably do well. All right, guys, that is pretty much it. You know, we're doing quite okay. Quite okay. We're actually going up. We're trending upwards. So are we going to fill that gap tomorrow? We most definitely could, okay, be hitting that 97,000 gap once again. things are looking steady. Things are holding quite strong. There's limited amount of Bitcoins out there, guys. So do not become discouraged. Continue to HODL and DCA. That is the right path. That is the right course. All right. Smash the like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys tomorrow. Same time as usual, 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.